There are hundreds and thousands of manga and anime that circulate and exist in this day and age. However, out of all the media I've consumed in my 23 years of life, yes, I know I'm an uncle now, out of all of the media I've consumed, there are certain ones that have cultivated the person I am today, and have left their mark on me in a way others haven't. And this isn't a video to say that this is the best piece of media about, or that this manga will affect your life the way it did mine. This is more of a homage, the start of a new series on the channel where periodically I talk about these series closer to my heart than others, because I feel that I need to have these standout videos where I can really be passionate about these things. I mean, that's pretty much the point of having a channel, isn't it? But first in line we have Katekyo Hitman Reborn, which is also known as Hitman Reborn, or simply just Reborn. And given the fact that I've never made a video talking about Reborn in my YouTube career, and that the manga's 20th anniversary just passed, I'm really excited to be bringing you this video. I absolutely fell in love with this series in the past, and it had so much impact on me during early secondary school. And these are the ages when I recently had been introduced to the concept of money in terms of having my own for transport, savings, etc. And I went out of my way to buy merchandise from a show for the first time, which I still have to this day. So I think it's safe to say that even then I was a big fan of Hitman Reborn. And 10 years later I've just finished a rewatch / read of the series in full, and although I'm much more aware of some faults and issues within the anime and manga, I love this series just as much as before, if not even more. It's truly underappreciated in today's age, and definitely still can hold its own compared with some of the titles we see in Shonen today. I remember how I first stumbled upon Reborn. Unfortunately, I can't remember exactly what I had watched prior, but I just finished the series on Crunchyroll and was desperately looking for something to fill the void, and this was around 2013 to 15 when Reborn was still relatively near the top of recommended animes you would see on the homepage. And as I just mentioned, I was looking for something to fill the void. I'm not gonna lie, it might have been Hunter x Hunter I just finished prior, because I know I saw both of these series around the same time, but I saw the visual and thought it looks good enough to check out, and hoped I had another banger show on my hands. Especially because I'd never heard of Reborn before, none of my friends had watched it before me, it wasn't really promoted heavily from my knowledge, I didn't see anyone posting videos on it at the time, it kind of was just there. So whether I was investing my time in these 203 episodes was hit or miss. But boy was I in for a journey. First episode in, we have the MC stripping all the way down to his boxers, a baby who can talk and claims he's a hitman sent to train our MC, Tsunayoshi Sawada, into a 10th generation mafia boss, and the hopelessness of it all because said MC is a useless loser with no backbone or drive. He couldn't even confess to his middle school crush, however when his life depended on it, but hey, at least it was relatively funny at how pathetic our MC could be at times, and Reborn himself definitely took advantage of this to add to the environment, so it was pretty enjoyable. And the cast that developed around Tsuna definitely were unique enough for the interest to stay alive, with typical elements you'd expect from a gag / comedy manga. From battling with dynamite to a bazooka that lets you travel 10 years into the future, Tsuna's constant streaking / dying wheel moments, poison cooking, Lambo, and Namimori's very own Hibari Kyoya. Literally, this man loves his school so much, I've never seen someone this in love with school in my entire life. Anyway, to be blunt, Reborn is a very fun series. Also, this may have been my first time being introduced to a main character with this trope of underdog / crybaby, so it was definitely a breath of fresh air. When Tsuna was in his dying wheel mode, it always gave me goosebumps, even for the stupidest of things. And the presence of this Wild Wild West type OST is super nostalgic for me now, as I'm sure other fans of Reborn would agree. However, a core issue with this series, I guess, well, a notion that you will typically hear when Hitman Reborn is in discussion, is how long it takes to pick up and get really good. Because this is a battle shonen, believe it or not, although at first if going in blind you would never expect it. So the shift that takes place for the series and its improvements from that point onward naturally leave the start to be criticized. And me personally, I enjoyed the lead up to said moment. The daily life arc was interesting enough for me to enjoy before the show hit its stride, and I think going through these episodes instead of skipping straight to the Kokuyo Arc immediately will make you appreciate the change even more. When in episode 25 / 26, our main character Tsuna has his awakening. In this world with a mafioso plotline, Tsuna is your typical teenager who lives in Japan. Despite his failure in almost everything academically, his loser status and overall uselessness, Tsuna is the descendant from a bloodline known as the Vongola, and he has been placed as a candidate to become Vongola X, which stands for Vongola the 10th, also known as Vongola Decimo. And it's for this purpose the strongest hitman in the world, Reborn, travelled from Italy all the way to Japan to train up Tsuna to become suitable to hold the title of Vongola X from the current boss of the Vongola Mafia family, Vongola 9th. However, given Tsuna's character, naturally he wants no parts of this. And as we progress through the story, Reborn, his now home tutor, integrates his teachings into Tsuna's daily life, his family, his surroundings, everything, which typically leads Tsuna into situations he doesn't want to be in. But for all the bad you'd expect with having ties to the Mafia, a whole lot of good comes from it. Tsuna now has friends he can rely on and that rely on him, he's gotten a little stronger, and even became closer to the girl he likes, Kyoko-chan. And when Reborn shoots him with these special bullets known as Dying Will bullets or Desperation bullets depending on which translation you're familiar with, Tsuna enters this state known as Dying Will mode, where he gains access to unbridled strength to achieve whatever objective he set out to do by any means. And Tsuna overcomes many different scenarios in the series with his Dying Will. However, once we reach the Kokuyo Arc, I think it's safe to say we officially start beginning to see real stakes in the show. And the events that are brought along with this arc is exactly what Tsuna feared, being the darkness of the Mafia coming to his doorstep, because a group of mafioso are acting as middle schoolers at Kokuyo. This small group is led by a big shot who escaped prison named Mukuro, and they start an attack on Tsuna's middle school to flush him out as Vongola X, as they know he's attending but they don't know his exact identity, which causes many people to get hurt including Tsuna's friends. And when the head of the disciplinary committee Hibari Kyoya, the strongest fighter Namimori, fails to return after going to Kokuyo's base, Tsuna alongside his friends go to handle business themselves. And the part of Tsuna's character which has always heavily stood out for me is his ability to rise to the occasion for his friends and those he cares about, despite his own shortcomings and self-consciousness. He knows he's a loser, he knows he's scared and doesn't want to do such scary things, but he's always true to himself. He's honestly very kind-hearted, and in hindsight, Tsuna was the start in the line for me to appreciate this type of character, which made MCs like Deku and Tanjiro later down the line very easy for me to become fond of. And in the words of a future character who appears much later on in the series, when describing Tsuna, she says, "His brow ever furrowed, he wields his fist as though in prayer. That is Vongola Decimo." A line which also mirrors the words Vongola Knife says to Tsuna in the Varia Arc. These dire moments when Tsuna's will is on full display without being forced to the surface through means of a special bullet are always very impactful within the story and greatly amplify his character for me. So when Tsuna comes face to face with Mukuro of his own volition, you expect this fight to be very different from the others. And different it was. With Mukuro being a skilled illusionist who's willing to use any means to achieve his goal, from controlling random people's bodies to even his own friends, Tsuna finds himself in an impossible situation of having to defeat Mukuro who's taken control of his friends' bodies. And Reborn, his tutor under strict orders of Vongola Knife, can't help with the fight directly. Outside of shooting Dying Will bullets and advice, he can't actually lay a hand on Mukuro, whose goal is to steal Tsuna's body and then use the Vongola family to start a wild-scale war in the Mafia, then destroying the Mafia as a whole. And this is where things start to get intense. With Tsuna at his wit's end given the impossible situation at hand, he begs Reborn for help, saying he always saves him and that he shouldn't abandon him. And in typical Reborn fashion, he hits Tsuna and tells him exactly the words he needs to hear to spur him to act. Since the relationship between these two is one of a kind, Reborn probably knows Tsuna better than he even knows himself. He tells him to stop whining and that he's more suited to being Vongola X than anyone else, and he should simply shout out how he feels. That's the Vongola's answer. And the no-good Tsuna, who always tries to avoid conflict and rejects the Mafia world and position he's in due to his birthright, the Tsuna who's always trying to run away from this responsibility, says, "I want to beat him. I want to take Mukuro down. I don't want to lose to such a monster. I want to defeat him." And Leon, Reborn's pet chameleon, not a normal chameleon by the way, starts to react to the change in Reborn students' mentality. A phenomenon which happens whenever Reborn students are about to undergo major growth is that Leon will lose control of his shapeshifting and transform uncontrollably, hence his current ball shape. However, once Tsuna makes his declaration, Leon has a metamorphosis which is supposed to be symbolic of Tsuna's current change and new maturity. And Leon produces two items in this dire situation to aid Tsuna and that serve as proof of his growth, being wool gloves known as the X gloves and a new bullet known as the criticism shot. When Tsuna gets hit with the criticism shot, he in real time experiences all the criticisms being made about him in the world, from his mother to his classmates, and he ponders on why during this moment of potentially dying, he needs to hear how pathetic he is, which is the typical narrative for Tsuna, at least from his perspective, no matter the changes he's made during his time with Reborn as his tutor. And these criticisms serve to awaken the blood of the Vongola within Tsuna. And the new power known as Hyper Dying Will mode, which is probably the form of Tsuna most of you who have seen this series but haven't watched already yet are familiar with, changes everything for our protagonist. It's definitely his best look and honestly one of my favorite designs for a character in anime and manga period. Akira Amano was cooking something generational with Tsuna's Hyper Dying Will mode. But this mode is Tsuna's main mode for battle, and in addition to Tsuna's super intuition, which he was showing signs of before the Mukuro fight, he can now use his gloves to ignite dying will flames, which enable him to fly and just do really cool shit. This is when Reborn starts to feel like your typical shonen, and trust me when I say it keeps getting better from here on out. With the Varia Arc that precedes this introducing some really cool concepts and characters, and displaying how epic this series can be with its fighting. Honestly, this arc is probably my favourite in this series for a variety of reasons, and Tsuna again is just really cool in this arc alongside his family, who needs to battle for the Vongola rings due to him being a candidate for Vongola X. This arc is where we get to see Tsuna's Hyper Dying Will mode on full display, and the power system of Reborn really begins to develop from this arc onwards, and is constantly progressing and changing throughout the series, while still having its core foundation present, which is something you don't always see so well executed in the show. The creative ways of fighting Akira and Mano introduced to this manga are honestly one of a kind, at least in my eyes, and definitely have to be inspiration for some of the newer gen power systems we see today. But Hitman Reborn is definitely an amazing series. Honestly, I feel it's a bit of a tricky one because with this anime we had 203 episodes, and there was definitely many episodes which were unnecessary, so I've always been a bit 50-50 with the show getting a remake. Whereas a remake or continuation would obviously see the series with modern animation, like we were baited with the Reborn X Dive exhibit, which I thought was going to be a whole episode. I'll never forgive them for this, by the way. A remake would bring modern animation, a likely bigger budget, and merchandise, and hopefully the rest of the manga volumes being translated in English, because I still to this day find it criminal that I can't have one of my favorite manga of all time in English, because I definitely would have purchased it ages ago if that was the case. But if Hitman Reborn got a remake, I would definitely be somewhat worried if it would be as good as the original, because there's just something special about its initial adaptation. Maybe it's because I have a huge liking towards early 2000s/90s animes, but I'd be scared of a remake messing up many things I enjoyed initially. But then on the other hand, the problem with a continuation is, I guess, the massive gap in time between its anime's end in 2010 to now. Loads of new viewers wouldn't know what's going on, so it would be kinda pointless. So I feel if we ever get more Reborn content, it would kinda have to be a remake. And I guess all I can say is fingers crossed it's anything like Hunter x Hunter 2011 or any of the other successful remakes out there. But one thing I would definitely need, it's not even a want, is the return of the original VAs. It just wouldn't be the same without them. And if I had to name like 4 or 5 characters whose VAs are just essential to the original Reborn experience, obviously it'd be Reborn and Tsuna. Next, I'd have Xanxus. I've always liked the voice acting on him. Squall is a no-brainer, of course. And last, probably Lambo, as annoying as he is. But with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to those who have got their first introduction to Hitman Reborn through this video, give it a chance. I'm sure you'll return to the video one day saying you enjoyed the experience, or maybe not. Everyone has their own taste at the end of the day. But be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and for my fellow Reborn fans, I'll be sure to make another video on this series in future. This is honestly the most fun I've had working on a video in a while, but I'll see you guys in the next one.